You know that moment when you're scrolling through your husband's iPad and find out he's been putting in overtime with his secretary instead of at the office? Turns out the urgent business meetings were code for screwing his 26-year-old assistant in the conference room while I was home alphabetizing his sock drawer. I stood in our pristine kitchen on that Thursday night, holding our family iPad with trembling hands, staring at messages that would make a romance novelist blush. 15 years of marriage reduced to digital evidence that my husband, Sterling Barrett, Greenwich's most respected financial executive, was nothing but a walking midlife crisis cliché. "Working late again, honey? Don't wait up," he'd texted me 3 hours earlier. Meanwhile, he was texting Paige, "Conference room B, wear that skirt." The worst part wasn't discovering the affair on our anniversary. It wasn't even finding out through text messages between my husband and a woman young enough to be babysat by our teenage daughter. No, the worst part was realizing I'd become the punchline in my own life. The oblivious wife who gave up her marketing career to manage the home front while her husband managed assets with his secretary. I'm Eloise Barrett, by the way, former marketing executive, current collector of designer yoga pants, and now, apparently, curator of my husband's dirty laundry. Literally and figuratively. Our story begins in Greenwich, Connecticut, where the hedges are as meticulously maintained as the marriages are secretly dysfunctional. Where women like me host charity galas and pretend not to notice when our husbands disappear with young assistants during cocktail hour. That Thursday night, while our kids, Audrey 14 and Mason 11, were at sleepovers, I had planned a surprise anniversary dinner. 15 years of marriage deserved at least some mediocre candlelight and overpriced champagne. I'd made reservations at Valbella, ordered flowers, even bought ridiculous lingerie that required an engineering degree to put on. Instead, I was standing in our gourmet kitchen, designed to look like it belonged in a cooking show, despite the fact that we ordered takeout 4 nights a week. My perfect blowout was wilting as rapidly as my delusions about my marriage, while I scrolled through months of messages between my husband and his secretary. "Can't stop thinking about yesterday," she'd written 3 days ago. "That dress is my kryptonite." He'd responded to a photo I wouldn't be describing in detail. I poured myself a generous glass of the anniversary champagne I'd been chilling and kept scrolling. Sterling and I hadn't had sex in 3 months, but apparently, he and Paige were making up for my deficit. Here's where a normal woman might break down sobbing. Maybe call her mother or best friend. Instead, I found myself laughing. Not the cute, feminine giggle that Sterling once told me was so adorable at cocktail parties, but a full-throated, borderline unhinged laugh that echoed through our 5-bedroom colonial. Because honestly, the sheer unoriginality of it all was what really got me. CEO sleeps with secretary? That's the best midlife crisis you could come up with, Sterling? For a man who prided himself on disruptive financial strategies, his personal life choices were about as innovative as a beige throw pillow. I took another sip of champagne and felt something shift inside me. The perfectly curated Eloise Barrett, the one who remembered every birthday in Sterling's family, who coordinated our Christmas card outfits 6 months in advance, who made sure his dry cleaning was always ready for business trips, was clocking out. In her place stood someone I hadn't seen in 15 years. The woman who once orchestrated marketing campaigns so aggressive they made competitors nervous. I opened our shared calendar app, the one Sterling clearly forgot I could access, and saw he was scheduled to attend his firm's holiday party the following evening at the Delamar, the annual event where board members, who were currently considering him for COO, would be present with their wives, where Paige would be playing the role of efficient assistant rather than afternoon delight. That's when the idea hit me with the subtlety of a freight train. Sterling always complained about my obsession with laundry, how I insisted on separating his workout clothes from his casual wear, how I had specific detergents for his dress shirts versus his golf polos, how I carefully folded his boxers into perfect rectangles and organized them by color in his drawer. Well, if he appreciated my laundry skills so little, perhaps Paige would value them more. I marched down to our basement laundry room, where the hamper contained nearly 2 weeks' worth of Sterling's dirty clothes. He'd been too busy to bring them down earlier in the week. Too busy indeed. I pulled out every pair of boxers, every sweat-stained undershirt, Every sock with that distinct man smell that no amount of Tide could fully eliminate. I found the mesh lingerie bag I used for delicates and began stuffing it with my husband's most intimate items, the ones with skid marks, the ones with suspicious stains, the gray ones that had once been white. By midnight, I had a plan. Not the dignified, lawyer-calling plan that the Greenwich Housewife Handbook would recommend, but a plan that the old Eloise, the one who once convinced a room full of executives to double a marketing budget during a recession, knew would be far more effective. I slept surprisingly well that night, alone in our king-size bed with its ridiculous thread count sheets. Sterling texted at 1 a.m. saying he was crashing at the office because he was working on something big. I bet he was. The next morning, I got the kids off to school with their usual Friday enthusiasm. Audrey barely looked up from her phone, and Mason was too busy talking about his weekend Fortnite plans to notice anything different about Mom. Sterling called to tell me he'd meet me directly at the holiday party that evening. Another busy day at the office. I told him I was looking forward to it with the kind of sincerity usually reserved for thanking your mother-in-law for an ugly sweater. As I sipped my morning coffee in our breakfast nook, watching a group of neighborhood women power walking past our house in their coordinated athleisure, I thought about the woman I'd become, how I'd traded boardroom presentations for PTA meetings, strategy sessions for meal planning. And for what? So Sterling could live out the most basic infidelity storyline known to man? Well, if he wanted basic, I was about to give him something far more original. I spent the day preparing. I had my hair done at Becker Salon. Balayage doesn't maintain itself during a crisis. I picked up my dry-cleaned Armani dress, classic black with just enough décolletage to remain tasteful, yet noticeable. I even got a mani-pedi in rage red, a color I normally avoided for being too loud. All the while, the mesh bag of Sterling's dirty underwear sat in the trunk of my Volvo like a ticking time bomb. You see, when you've spent 15 years planning perfect dinner parties and school fundraisers, you develop a certain talent for event management. And tonight's holiday party was about to become the most memorable event in Barrett Financial's history. The question wasn't whether I would confront Sterling's infidelity. It was how spectacularly I would do it. Because if there's one thing Greenwich housewives understand better than anyone, it's that presentation is everything. The annual Barrett Financial holiday party at the Delamar was exactly the kind of affair that makes Greenwich, Connecticut feel like a parody of itself. Men in nearly identical Navy suits pretending their seven-figure bonuses were just okay this year, while their wives compared vacation homes and plastic surgeons in the same breath. I arrived fashionably late, which in Greenwich translates to exactly 17 minutes after the stated start time, early enough to appear eager, late enough to make an entrance. The valet gave my Volvo the slightly disappointed look reserved for cars worth less than 6 figures, completely unaware that the most valuable item in it wasn't the vehicle, but the mesh laundry bag in my designer tote. The ballroom was decorated in what I can only describe as corporate Christmas chic. Just enough sparkle to acknowledge the season without offending anyone who might celebrate something else. A 10-foot tree dripping with silver and blue ornaments, the company colors naturally, dominated one corner, while ice sculptures shaped like dollar signs slowly melted on the buffet table. Subtle. I spotted Sterling immediately. It's a wife's superpower to locate her husband in a crowded room, especially when he's standing suspiciously close to his 20-something secretary. Sterling was holding court near the bar, one hand gesturing emphatically as he no doubt explained some brilliant financial strategy, the other resting just a little too comfortably on Paige's lower back. Paige, wearing a dress that probably cost her entire monthly salary, was gazing up at him with the kind of adoration usually reserved for boy bands and religious figures. Her desk might be outside Sterling's office, but it was clear she'd spent plenty of time inside it. "Eloise, there you are!" My best friend Vera Mitchell materialized at my side, champagne flute already in hand. I was starting to worry you'd skip this thrilling display of corporate self-congratulation. Vera had been my sanity anchor since we both moved to Greenwich a decade ago. Her husband Curtis worked at Barrett Financial too, but unlike Sterling, Curtis actually seemed to enjoy going home to his wife, and missed the opportunity to watch middle-aged men get progressively handsy as the open bar works its magic. "Never," I replied, accepting the glass she offered. You look different tonight, Vera said, studying my face. Did you finally try that new Botox place in Stamford? No, just the sudden clarity that comes with discovering your husband is sleeping with his secretary. I said it so casually that Vera nearly choked on her champagne. He's what? Sleeping with Paige. Having an affair. Dipping his pen in the company ink. Choose whichever euphemism makes you most comfortable. I took a sip of champagne. I found their texts last night. On our anniversary. That absolute dumpster fire of a human being, Vera whispered, her eyes darting to where Sterling was now laughing with Warren Barrett, his father and the company's founder. What are you going to do? Please tell me you've called Patricia. Patricia was the divorce attorney who had guided half of the Greenwich Yacht Club through their marital dissolutions. Oh, I have something more immediate planned, I said, patting my tote bag. Something a bit more public. Vera's eyes widened. Eloise Barrett, what do you have in that bag? 15 years of laundry service, gift-wrapped for the other woman. Before Vera could respond, Warren Barrett spotted me and waved me over. Sterling's father had always liked me, probably because I dedicated years to making his son look good. There's my favorite daughter-in-law, Warren boomed as I approached. At 70, he still had the energy and volume of a man half his age. Sterling was just telling us about the Robertson account. Brilliant work. Was he? I smiled, giving Sterling a look that made him visibly uncomfortable. He's been working so hard lately. All those late nights at the office. Sterling cleared his throat. Just doing what needs to be done. Isn't that the truth? I said sweetly, then turned to Paige, who was hovering nearby with her tablet, playing the role of dedicated assistant. Paige, you look lovely tonight. That dress is stunning. Thank you, Mrs. Barrett, she replied, having the decency to blush. It's just something I picked up at Nordstrom. How resourceful of you, I said. Sterling always appreciates a woman who knows how to maximize her resources. Don't you, honey? Sterling loosened his tie slightly. Eloise, have you met the new board members? They're eager to chat about the charity gala you chaired last spring. Classic deflection. Sterling had always been good at redirecting uncomfortable conversations, a skill that probably served him well when juggling a wife and a mistress. I'd be delighted to, but first I need to give Paige something. A token of appreciation, if you will. Warren clapped his hands. Always the thoughtful one. This is why everyone loves Eloise. Never forgets anyone. If only he knew how thoughtful I was about to be. Paige, could I see you by your desk for a moment? I brought something that might be useful for your position. Sterling's face went from uncomfortable to alarmed. Eloise, maybe now isn't nonsense. It'll just take a minute. We'll be right back. I linked my arm through Paige's, leaving Sterling no choice but to watch us walk away or make a scene in front of his father and the board members who were about to decide his professional fate. Paige's desk was in the executive suite on the top floor of the building, which was open for the party so guests could admire the harbor views. A few couples were already on the balcony, admiring the December lights reflecting on the water. Mrs. Barrett, is everything okay? Paige asked as we reached her meticulously organized workstation. A framed photo of Sterling and the executive team stood next to her computer, Sterling's face front and center. That depends on your definition of okay, I said, placing my tote bag on her desk. Tell me, Paige, do you know what today is? She blinked those expertly mascared eyelashes. Friday, December 13th? Yes, but more specifically, it's the day after my 15th wedding anniversary. The anniversary my husband forgot because he was too busy sending you inappropriate texts about your skirt. The color drained from her face. Mrs. Barrett, I don't know what— Oh, spare me the innocent act. It's beneath both of us. I opened my bag and pulled out the mesh laundry sack. You know, when I gave up my marketing career to support Sterling, I took on many roles. Chief among them, laundress extraordinaire. I upended the bag on her desk, and Sterling's dirty underwear cascaded across her keyboard, notepad, and the fancy company pen set she'd arranged just so. 15 years of marriage reduced to a pile of stained boxers and sweaty undershirts. Since you've been handling my husband's business, I thought you might want to handle his laundry too, I said, as Paige stared in horror at the intimate items now decorating her workspace. There's skid marks on the blue ones. He really needs to increase his fiber intake. By now, a small crowd had gathered. The executive floor was never this accessible, and partygoers couldn't resist exploring. What they found was Greenwich's most talked-about financial executive's dirty laundry, literally, spread across his secretary's desk. What in God's name is going on here? Sterling appeared, face flushed with either rage or embarrassment, possibly both. His father was right behind him, along with 3 board members and their wives. "Just dropping off your dirty laundry, dear," I said cheerfully. "Since Paige has been handling so many of your personal needs, I figured she wouldn't mind taking on one more." Warren Barrett stared at the display, then at his son, his bushy eyebrows nearly reaching his hairline. "Sterling? What is she talking about?" I pulled out my phone and held up the screen, displaying one of the more explicit exchanges between my husband and his assistant. "Would you like me to read this aloud, or would you prefer I just email it to the board's distribution list? I believe I'm still on it from planning the summer golf fundraiser." The room went so silent you could hear the ice sculptures melting downstairs. Sterling stepped toward me, voice low. "Eloise, you're making a scene." "No, Sterling," I corrected him, loud enough for everyone to hear. "You made the scene when you decided to sleep with your secretary instead of coming home for our anniversary. I'm just making sure the backdrop is properly decorated." Vera appeared at my side, a look of horrified delight on her face. She slipped her arm through mine in solidarity. "Mrs. Barrett," one of the board members' wives said, "perhaps we should discuss this privately." "Why?" "My husband didn't keep it private." "Why should I?" I turned back to Paige, who looked like she wanted the floor to swallow her whole. "By the way, he likes his dress shirts starched, and he's allergic to fabric softener, just FYI. As I turned to leave with Vera, I paused beside Sterling. "I'll see you at home. Don't wait up." I echoed his text from the night before, then added sweetly, "Oh, and happy anniversary." The walk through the holiday party to the exit felt like a victory lap. Behind me, chaos was erupting in the executive suite, with Sterling trying to salvage both his reputation and his promotion prospects. But the night was young, and I was just getting started. By Saturday morning, my underwear exhibition had become the talk of Greenwich faster than you can say, non-disclosure agreement. My phone was blowing up with text messages, some supportive, others pretending to be concerned while fishing for juicy details. The Greenwich grapevine operates with an efficiency that the CIA would envy. I was enjoying my coffee in peaceful solitude when Sterling finally came home, looking like he'd spent the night in his office chair, which he probably had. The board members weren't exactly rushing to offer him a room at their homes after the show I'd put on. "Have you completely lost your mind?" he demanded, throwing his keys on the kitchen counter with enough force to chip our imported marble. That would bother him later. Sterling was very particular about the surfaces in a home he rarely cleaned. "Good morning to you too," I replied, not bothering to look up from my New York Times crossword. "There's coffee in the pot, though you might prefer Paige to fetch it for you. Do you have any idea what you've done?" He was pacing now, designer shoes squeaking against our pristine hardwood floors. "Warren has postponed the board's decision on my promotion. 15 years of work, and you destroyed it in 5 minutes with your childish stunt." I carefully set down my pen and looked at him. Really looked at him. The man I'd married 15 years ago had been ambitious but principled. Somewhere along the way, he'd kept the ambition and jettisoned everything else. Correction. You destroyed it when you decided to have an affair with your 26-year-old secretary. I just made the destruction public. Sterling ran his hands through his hair, a gesture that once made my heart flutter, but now just reminded me of how much we'd spent on his premium shampoo. "It wasn't an affair," he said, his voice lower now. It was just flirting. A stupid mistake." I laughed so hard I nearly spilled my coffee. "Flirting? Should I read the texts aloud? The ones where you describe what you did to her in the conference room after hours? Or maybe we should discuss the hotel receipts I found when I was going through our credit card statements this morning." That got his attention. His face went pale beneath his weekend stubble. "You went through our financial records?" "I went through everything, Sterling. While you were busy doing damage control at the office, I was doing reconnaissance at home. I took a satisfied sip of coffee. Did you really think I wouldn't notice the charges at the Delamar on random Wednesday afternoons? We live 15 minutes away. Why would you need a hotel room unless you were entertaining? The truth was, I hadn't noticed. Not until now. I'd been too busy being the perfect wife, managing our perfect life, to see that it was all built on quicksand. But Sterling didn't need to know that my detective work had been retroactive rather than proactive. It was a mistake, he repeated, sinking into a kitchen chair. A stupid midlife crisis. It didn't mean anything. That's fascinating, I said, closing my newspaper. Because I just got off the phone with Patricia Hollingsworth. Sterling's head snapped up. Everyone in Greenwich knew Patricia, the divorce attorney who'd taken half the hedge fund managers in Fairfield County to the cleaners. You called a divorce lawyer? His voice cracked slightly. Eloise, don't you think you're overreacting? We can work through this. Can we? Because I'm not sure I want to. I stood up and walked to the refrigerator, pulling out a pitcher of fresh squeezed orange juice I'd prepared earlier. Orange juice? I made it this morning. No pulp, just how you like it. Sterling stared at me like I'd grown a second head. You're offering me juice while telling me you're divorcing me? Multitasking is my superpower. You used to call it annoying when I'd plan a charity gala while cooking dinner and helping Mason with his science project. I poured him a glass anyway. And I didn't say I was divorcing you. I said I called Patricia. What's the difference? He took the juice, probably out of habit. The difference is that Patricia gave me options. I leaned against the counter. And unlike you, I believe in exploring all my options before making a commitment. Just then, Audrey wandered into the kitchen, eyes glued to her phone. At 14, she'd perfected the art of being simultaneously present and completely checked out. Mom, Olivia's mom wants to know if you're still chaperoning the winter formal next week, or if you're too busy destroying Dad's career. She didn't even look up as she delivered this bomb. Sterling choked on his orange juice. What? Audrey finally glanced up, shrugging with the indifference only a teenager can muster. It's all over Instagram, Dad. Mrs. Peterson got it on video. You're basically a meme now. She opened the refrigerator and extracted a yogurt. By the way, Mason's at Tyler's house until noon. Tyler's mom said she'll drop him off. With that, she drifted back upstairs, leaving Sterling and me in stunned silence. A video? Sterling whispered, horror dawning on his face. There's a video? Apparently so. I hadn't known about the video until now, but I wasn't about to admit that. The joys of living in the digital age. Nothing stays private anymore. Not affairs, not dirty laundry, nothing. Sterling looked like he might be sick on our custom tile backsplash. Eloise, what do you want? Money? The house? Just tell me what will make this go away. And there it was, the assumption that everything had a price. That's how Sterling had navigated his entire adult life, identifying what people wanted and calculating if he could afford to give it to them. What I want, I said carefully, is something you can't buy. Try me, he challenged, desperation giving him a second wind of confidence. I want you to understand what it feels like to have your value determined by someone else, to be reduced to a function rather than a person. Sterling's forehead creased. What are you talking about? For 15 years, I've been the CEO of this household. I've managed our social calendar, raised our children, maintained our home, supported your career, and organized every aspect of your personal life. Yet somewhere along the way, you decided I was replaceable, or at least, parts of me were. I walked over to the built-in desk in our kitchen where I kept our family's paperwork meticulously organized. From the drawer, I pulled out a manila folder. This is my counteroffer, I said, sliding it across the island to him. Counteroffer to what? Sterling asked, not touching the folder. To divorce. Patricia helped me draft it yesterday. He finally opened the folder and began reading the document inside, his expression morphing from confusion to disbelief. This is insane, he muttered, flipping through the pages. You can't be serious. I'm completely serious. Think of it as a post-nuptial agreement. The terms are simple. You can stay in this marriage and this house, but with some adjustments to your job description. Sterling looked up at me. My job description? Since you seem to value Paige's professional contributions over my domestic ones, I thought it was time for a role reversal. I tapped the document. You'll take over all household duties: laundry, cleaning, cooking, carpool, social coordination. Everything I've been doing while you've been building your career and your extracurricular activities. And what will you be doing? He asked, his voice dangerously quiet. I've accepted a position at Mitchell Creative, I replied with a smile. Vera's husband Curtis has been trying to recruit me for years to rebuild their marketing department. I start on Monday. Sterling's jaw actually dropped. You took a job without discussing it with me? Oh, I'm sorry. Did I need to consult you before making decisions about my body and my time? That's interesting, because you certainly didn't consult me before spending yours with Paige. The front door opened and closed, followed by the sound of 11-year-old feet pounding through the hallway. Mom! Dad! Tyler's got the new PlayStation and his mom says they might get a dog, and can we please get a dog too? Mason burst into the kitchen, all freckles and energy, oblivious to the tension. We'll talk about it later, buddy, I said, ruffling his hair. Why don't you go upstairs and take a shower? You smell like you slept in a bag of chips. That's because Tyler's mom let us have chips for breakfast, he announced proudly before racing upstairs. When he was gone, Sterling carefully closed the folder. You're using our children as pawns? No, Sterling. I'm protecting them from understanding exactly how their father has betrayed their mother, which is more than you deserve. I picked up my coffee mug and headed for the doorway, then paused. You have until Monday morning to decide. Option 1, sign the agreement and commit to the new arrangement. Option 2, I file for divorce, and Patricia ensures that your dirty laundry becomes very public record during proceedings. Your choice. I left him sitting there, staring at the document that would redefine our marriage, if he chose to save it. Upstairs, I closed my bedroom door and finally allowed myself a moment of uncertainty. I'd spent the last 24 hours operating on pure adrenaline and righteous anger. The strategic planner in me had taken over, but now, in the quiet of my room, I wondered if I was making the right choice. Then I heard my phone ping with a text notification. It was Vera. Battle station's ready. Operation Phoenix is a go whenever you are. I smiled. The old Eloise, the marketing executive who'd once orchestrated campaigns that changed consumer behavior nationwide, wasn't just back. She was just getting warmed up. Monday morning arrived with the kind of crisp December chill that makes Connecticut women clutch their cashmere cardigans a little tighter. I stood in front of my closet. The one Sterling had always joked was bigger than our first apartment, and surveyed my options with fresh eyes. No more Greenwich housewife uniform of designer yoga pants and discreet jewelry. Today called for corporate armor. I selected a sleek charcoal suit I'd preserved like a museum artifact from my previous life, paired with heels that meant business and a red lipstick that screamed it. 15 years of school bake sales hadn't diminished my ability to dress for the kill. Sterling had spent the weekend alternating between sulking in his home office and making awkward attempts at reconciliation, including a pathetic bouquet of grocery store flowers and an offer to talk things through over dinner. I'd declined both, spending my time instead finalizing my strategy with Vera and getting my professional wardrobe in order. When I came downstairs, Sterling was standing in the kitchen holding the document I'd presented him, his signature freshly scrawled across the bottom. He looked like a man attending his own funeral. I signed it, he said unnecessarily, holding it out to me. I hope you're satisfied. I accepted the folder with a pleasant smile. Satisfaction isn't really the goal here, Sterling. Accountability is. He loosened his tie, the burgundy Hermes I'd given him last Christmas. So what happens now? Now, I said, checking my watch. You drive the kids to school. Audrey needs to be dropped off first, then Mason. Mason has basketball practice after school, so he needs to be picked up at 5:30, not 3:15. There's a casserole in the refrigerator with baking instructions taped to the top. The dry cleaning needs to be picked up by noon, and the housekeeper called in sick, so you'll need to handle the bathrooms before the Mitchells come over for dinner at 7. Sterling stared at me, dumbfounded. Dinner? With the Mitchells? Tonight? Yes. I've already accepted a position with Curtis, remember? We're celebrating. I took the liberty of putting the details in your calendar. The one you apparently only check for hotel rendezvous with assistants half your age. His face reddened. Eloise, I have a meeting with the board today. They're reconsidering the promotion after I spent the entire weekend doing damage control. How nice for you, I replied, gathering my new designer briefcase. I have a meeting with the executive team at Mitchell Creative to outline my strategy for revamping their entire marketing approach. I suppose we'll both have an interesting Monday. I can't just drop everything to be a house husband, he protested, following me toward the garage door. I turned to face him. Interesting. That's exactly what you asked me to do 15 years ago when Audrey was born. Just for a few years, you said. We can afford it, you said. Family comes first, you said. Tell me, Sterling, was Paige considered family too? Or was she more of an extracurricular activity? That shut him up faster than a market crash. The school drop-off line starts getting congested around 7:45, so you'll want to leave in about 10 minutes, I advised, checking my lipstick in the hallway mirror. Oh, and don't forget, the lunch accounts need to be topped up today. The portal password is in the household binder in my desk drawer. Good luck. I walked out the door to the sound of Sterling frantically calling for the kids to hurry up, a symphony I'd conducted solo for a decade and a half. Mitchell Creative occupied a renovated warehouse in Stamford with the kind of industrial chic aesthetic that screamed, "We're creative, but also successful." When I walked in, Vera was waiting in the lobby, practically vibrating with excitement. "You look incredible," she gushed, embracing me. "Like a phoenix rising from a pile of dirty underwear." "Poetic as always," I laughed. "Is everything ready?" "Curtis has the whole team assembled in the conference room. And you'll never guess who reached out this morning asking if we had any positions available." I raised an eyebrow. "Who?" "Paige Monroe." Vera's grin was downright predatory. "Apparently, she's suddenly finding the atmosphere at Barrett Financial uncomfortable." I couldn't help but laugh. "Did she happen to mention if she had any laundry experience?" "I told her we'd keep her resume on file." Vera snickered. "In the circular file." "Op!" The morning at Mitchell Creative was a blur of introductions, presentations, and the heady rush of being valued for my brain rather than my hosting skills. By noon, I'd already approved a new campaign direction and scheduled meetings with 3 potential clients who'd apparently been waiting for someone with actual vision to join the firm. During lunch, my phone buzzed with a text from Sterling. "How do I reschedule a dental cleaning? Dr. Peterson's office called and Mason was supposed to go in today at 2. I didn't bother replying. Learning through failure had always been Sterling's preferred method. For others, at least. Now he could try it himself. Another text followed 10 minutes later. "Found the portal password, but it's not working. Kids say they're literally starving to death." Direct quote from Mason. And then, "Dry cleaner says they don't have anything under Barrett." And finally, "It's under your name, isn't it? Everything's under your name." Bingo. 15 years of marriage, and he was just now realizing that the infrastructure of our entire lives, from dry cleaning accounts to doctor appointments, had been invisibly managed by me. My name on everything because I was the one who always handled it. I silenced my phone and returned to my meeting, where people were actually taking notes on what I had to say. That evening, I arrived home at 6:45 to find our house in a state that could generously be described as lived in and accurately described as post-apocalyptic. Dishes filled the sink, school bags exploded across the entryway, and Sterling stood in the middle of the kitchen looking like he'd gone 10 rounds with a tornado. "The casserole burned," he announced, gesturing to a blackened dish in the sink. "And Mason spilled an entire gallon of milk trying to make cereal for a snack." "Fascinating," I replied, setting down my briefcase. "The Mitchells will be here in 15 minutes. "I know." His voice rose an octave. "I've ordered pizza, but the place said it might be late, and I couldn't find the good napkins, and Audrey is refusing to come downstairs because apparently everyone at school saw the video of you dumping my underwear on Paige's desk." I poured myself a glass of the Cabernet Sterling had opened. Poorly, judging by the cork bits floating in it. "The good napkins are in the dining room sideboard. Second drawer on the left, behind the placemats. The candles are there too. Audrey will come down if you tell her Vera is bringing the new Sephora holiday collection for her to preview. And pizza is fine." I took a sip of wine, grimacing at the cork. Oh, and the board called me today. Sterling froze in the act of frantically wiping down the counter. The board? Of Barrett Financial? Called you? Why? Apparently, Warren was quite impressed with my directness at the holiday party. He said it reminded him of how I used to handle difficult clients back when I worked in marketing and we first met. I swirled my wine. He also mentioned that he's reevaluating the company's direction, particularly regarding executive leadership. What does that mean? Sterling's voice was barely a whisper. It means, I said, setting down my glass, that your father is considering whether someone who can't manage his personal affairs ethically should be trusted to manage client investments. He's invited me to lunch tomorrow to discuss my thoughts on the matter. The doorbell rang before Sterling could respond. That'll be the Mitchells, I said cheerfully. You might want to change your shirt. You have what looks like spaghetti sauce on the collar. The Italian place on Main never seals their takeout containers properly. As Sterling raced upstairs, I opened the door to welcome Vera and Curtis, both grinning like they'd won the lottery. How was day one of the Sterling Barrett rehabilitation program? Curtis asked, handing me a bottle of proper wine. Educational, I replied. For both of us. Vera peered around me at the chaotic house. I see he's excelling at domestic management the same way he excelled at marital fidelity. He's learning, I said, accepting the Sephora bag Vera had brought for Audrey. Sometimes growth requires a complete breakdown of the existing structure. Curtis nodded appreciatively. I see the marketing strategist never really left you. She was just rebranding. I winked, leading them into the disaster zone that Sterling was now frantically trying to tame. Watching my husband, the man who once lectured me about the importance of presentation, scramble to fold, throw blankets, and hide dirty dishes, brought a satisfaction no amount of retail therapy could match. The best revenge, I was discovering, wasn't just living well. It was making sure the person who wronged you had a front-row seat to your renaissance. 1 year later, I stood in our kitchen, immaculate now that Sterling had finally mastered the art of cleaning, and watched through the window as my husband struggled to hang Christmas lights on our maple tree. The same task that he'd once declared too tedious and hired people to do was now firmly in his job description, along with laundry, meal planning, and maintaining our social calendar. He's using the wrong ladder again, Vera observed, sipping her coffee beside me. Our Saturday brunches had become a tradition since the Great Underwear Revolution, as we'd come to call it. I know, I replied, but he'll figure it out when he can't reach the top branches. Growth requires failure. You're positively zen these days, Vera laughed. Corporate success agrees with you. She wasn't wrong. In the 12 months since I'd returned to the workforce, Mitchell Creative had doubled its client roster, largely due to my overhaul of their marketing strategy. The promotion to Chief Marketing Officer had come after just 6 months, along with an office that had an actual door instead of those ridiculous open-concept cubicles that make everyone feel like they're perpetually auditioning for their jobs. Speaking of corporate success, Vera continued, have you made a decision about Warren's offer? Ah, yes, the offer. 4 months after my underwear exhibit, Warren Barrett had restructured the executive team at Barrett Financial. Sterling had kept his job but lost his shot at the C-suite. Instead, Warren had created a new position, Chief of Client Relations, and offered it to me. I'm still considering it, I said, watching Sterling nearly topple from the ladder. The irony is delicious, but I'm not sure I want to work with my husband every day. I've just gotten used to having adult conversations that don't involve permission slips or pasta preferences. Through the window, I could see Audrey emerge from the house, phone predictably in hand, to critique her father's decorating efforts. At 15, she'd blossomed once freed from the shadow of her parents' dysfunctional marriage. Mason, now 12, was at basketball practice, driven there by Sterling in the minivan he once refused to be seen in, but now piloted with the grim determination of a man who'd learned that status symbols don't do school carpools. The doorbell rang, and Vera raised an eyebrow. Expecting someone? Just the final touch to our holiday preparations, I said with a smile, heading to answer it. On the porch stood Paige Monroe, holding a large shopping bag and looking considerably less polished than she had during her secretary days. After the holiday party incident, she'd left Barrett Financial and, through a series of career missteps that absolutely did not involve any subtle sabotage from me, had ended up working at the high-end cleaning service we used for special occasions. "Mrs. Barrett," she nodded stiffly, "I'm here for the pre-holiday deep clean." "Of course," I said warmly, stepping aside. "Sterling will show you where the supplies are kept. He's become quite the expert on household management." The look that passed between Paige and Sterling when he came inside to find her standing in our foyer was worth every penny of the exorbitant fee the cleaning service charged. "Paige will be helping with the holiday prep," I informed him. "Since we're hosting both our families this year, I thought an extra pair of hands would be useful. You two already know each other's preferences, so I'm sure you'll work wonderfully together." Sterling's face cycled through at least 5 distinct emotions before settling on resigned acceptance. This was our new normal. I made the money and the decisions. He made the beds and the dinner. "The guest bathroom needs special attention," he told Paige in the professional tone he'd developed for domestic matters. "The kids have friends over constantly, and somehow they managed to get toothpaste literally everywhere." As they walked away, Vera slow-clapped beside me. "That was either the cruelest or most brilliant thing I've ever witnessed." "Why not both?" I shrugged. "Besides, it's not cruelty. It's closure, for all of us." That evening, with the house gleaming and the children occupied with holiday movies, Sterling and I sat in the living room with glasses of wine, properly opened this time, as domestic failure had made him surprisingly adept at handling cork. "Warren called again about the position," Sterling said, breaking our comfortable silence. "He thinks you're the missing piece in the company's client strategy." "And what do you think?" I asked, curious despite myself. Sterling considered his glass. "I think my father recognizes talent when he sees it. I think I was an idiot to ever take you for granted. And I think that if anyone deserves that corner office with the harbor view, it's you." I studied him, the man I'd married, lost, and then rediscovered in the strangest of ways. He'd changed over the past year. The entitlement had been scrubbed away along with countless pasta stains and bathroom messes. In its place was something I hadn't seen since we were young: humility. "You know what's ironic?" I said. "For 15 years, I managed our home while you managed investments. Now I manage campaigns while you manage our home. We've completely switched roles, and somehow, we're both better at our new jobs than we were at our old ones." Sterling laughed, a genuine laugh, not the forced social chuckle he'd perfected for client dinners. "I made partner because I could chart market patterns. Turns out I completely missed the pattern in my own life, which was, that partnership means actual partnership, not outsourcing the parts you don't want to deal with." I raised my glass. "To belated realizations." He clinked his glass against mine. "And to dirty laundry, both the kind you wash and the kind you air out." We sat in silence for a moment, the Christmas tree lights reflecting in our windows, before Sterling asked the question that had been hovering between us for months. "Are we going to be okay, Eloise? Really okay?" I considered this. The affair had broken something fundamental between us, but the aftermath had forced a reconstruction that was, surprisingly, stronger in many ways. "I think," I said carefully, "that we're going to be something better than okay. We're going to be honest." Outside, snow began to fall, dusting our meticulously decorated yard with fresh possibilities. Sterling would have to shovel it in the morning. That was in our contract. But I might help him, not because I had to, but because I was starting to want to. The greatest revenge isn't just making your cheating husband do laundry for eternity, though that part is undeniably satisfying. The greatest revenge is reclaiming yourself so thoroughly that the betrayal becomes merely a plot point in your origin story, not the defining chapter. Or as I like to put it, sometimes you have to air out all the dirty laundry to find out which relationships are color fast and which ones bleed.